You know what's the meaning of Theravada? Are you all Theravadins? Then you're not Buddhavadins. The word Theravada has a modern meaning. This modern usage of the word Theravada was innovated in the early 20th century by one American monk who was ordained in Burma. At that time, Buddhists who looked to the Pali canon or the Pali scriptures as their authority were referred to as Hinayana. So you have the Mahayana on the one hand and the Hinayana on the other hand. This American man didn't like the idea of being called a Hinayanist. So he sort of made use of this word Theravada and proposed that this school of Buddhism should be called Theravada instead of Hinayana. And at that time, there was an inaugural meeting and formation of the World Buddhist Council or something like that by the very famous Walpola Rahula, the Sri Lankan monk. So he made this proposal in that meeting with all the different schools of Buddhism, and they all agreed to call this school of Buddhism Theravada. I wonder where this American monk got the word Theravada. The word Theravada was used differently in the Pali scriptures, in the Pali commentaries. As you all know, our existing Pali commentaries were the work of who? Buddhaghosa. Yeah, Buddhaghosa was an Indian monk who came from the Indian continent over to Sri Lanka in the 5th century AD. That was about 900 years or so after the Buddha passed away. At that time, it seems that the form of Buddhism that we now call Theravada wasn't as well established in India as it was in Sri Lanka. In Sri Lanka, at one place called the Mahavihara, not the Brickfields Mahavihara, but Anuradhapura Mahavihara, the monastery had all the Pali Canon there, as well as the commentaries to the Pali Canon. But these commentaries were in Similes, not in Pali. And so people who could not read or understand Similes could not have access to the commentaries. So it seems that Buddhaghosa was sent by his teacher in India to come over to Sri Lanka to make the commentaries available to non-Similes speaking monks. So he came over and he volunteered to translate that into Magadhi or Pali. He's an Indian, and he came over to Sri Lanka, so the Similes were very suspicious of him. He's not sure whether he is really capable of translating correctly or not. So they put him to the test, and then he came out with his very famous work called the Visuddhimagga, the path of purification, which showed how skillful he was and how wise he was in understanding the Buddha's teaching according to the interpretation of the Theras of the Mahavihara in Anuradhapura. So because he impressed the elders, they gave him permission to translate all the commentaries from Similes into Magadhi or Pali, as we now call it. Pali is not actually a language. Pali means text. Pali means the canon. The canonical texts are called Pali in the scriptures. But anyway, nowadays people call it Pali language because the canonical texts were preserved in this language. The language is actually Magadhi, a form of Magadhi. So what happened was, when Buddhaghosa was trying to translate these Similes texts, these Similes commentaries, there was not only one single commentary, there were many commentaries, and he collated them. Some of them contradicted one another. Some of them overlapped. So he would just collate them and take what is nearer to the Pali Canon. And when there are inconsistencies, then sometimes he would bring them out and give his own opinion and his decision on which should be followed because it is nearer to the Pali Canon. Sometimes the commentaries, although they try to explain certain words in the Pali Canon, also missed out other words. So there are gray areas in between. They are not explained in the Pali Canon, they are not explained by the commentaries, and so there is a gray area. So at that time, there were many Theras, elders, who gave their own interpretations. Then Buddhaghosa would write in the commentary, okay, Sumana Thera says this, Tissa Thera says this, Siva Thera says this, and then this Thera. So that is called Theravada. The views and interpretations of the Theras that were contemporaries with Buddhaghosa. Now, in the commentary that we have now, that was translated from the Similes into Magadhi or Pali by Buddhaghosa, in the Samanta Pasadika, which is the commentary to the Vinaya Pitaka, there's one part where he talks about the fourfold Vinaya. That is talking about the hierarchy of scriptural authority. Because in the Vinaya, we have all these legal procedures. When somebody has an issue and he claims that this is the Dhamma, this is the Vinaya. And then somebody else says that it's not the Dhamma, there's not the Vinaya. So there is a controversy. So they will have to settle it. How do you settle it? So they have an outline how to settle such a controversy. We resort to the highest authority. So they have a hierarchy of authority. So the highest authority is the Pali Canon, whatever is in the Sutta. The second highest authority is what is implicit in the Sutta, but not explicitly stated. For example, just now in AN 650, where we have this sequence of sense restraint leading to virtuous behavior, leading to right concentration, leading to various forms of wisdom, right? This is not explicitly stated as developed in body, in virtuous behavior, in mind, and in wisdom, correct? But implicitly, it seems to have that sequence. So this is implicit. This is not explicit. But that is second in authority. Third in authority would be the commentaries, right? For example, the commentary says developed in body means 5 sense restraint, right? 5 sense restraint. That is the commentarial thing. But the Sutta says guarding the senses means guarding 6 senses, not 5. You see? So now when there is a contradiction, then which one do you take? You must take the highest authority. The highest authority is the Sutta, not the commentary. Okay, so then below the commentary would be personal opinion. Alright, and then the commentary also explains what is meant by personal opinion. Personal opinion is none of the above, which means it's not in the Pali Canon, it's not implicit in the Pali Canon, it's not found in the commentary. So that means all the Theravada, all the Theravada are all personal opinion. So this is the least authority. Right? The Theravada are the views and interpretations of Theras to try to explain gray areas which are not found in the Sutta, not found in the commentaries. Okay? So if you cannot find the Sutta, you cannot find it implicitly mentioned in the Sutta, you cannot find it in the commentary, then you resort to personal view. No choice, ma. Right? If you had a choice, of course you will go for the highest authority. If you cannot find in any 1, 2, or 3, then you go on to the fourth one. So they say that in a dispute, one should not rely on the lowest authority. Yeah, one should always rely on the highest authority. The lowest authority has the least value. Okay, so this is something you need to keep in mind. So this is Aggacitta Theravada. Okay, so developing body, as I understand it, refers to restraint of the 6 senses, not just the 5, as 3 commentaries explained. And this is based on SN 35.127, AN 650, and common sense. Now, when you have restraint of the 6 senses, What does it mean? It means that you are guarding the subjective experiencer so that it does not grasp at the signs and features of what is perceived through the six senses. Correct? What you see, hear, smell, taste, feel with the body, as well as ideas or memories or imagination that arise in your mind, you don't grasp at its signs and features so that you are not invaded by evil, unwholesome states of likes and dislikes. That is what restraint of the six senses is all about. Correct? Okay, when you do that, then there's right thought. Why? What is right thought? Right thought is defined in three ways. Renunciation, 2, non-ill will, 3, harmlessness. Renunciation means renouncing desire for sensual pleasures. Not necessarily becoming a monk, okay, or a nun. So when you practice restraint of the six senses, are you not renouncing pleasure to the senses? Because if whatever you perceive through the senses, immediately you are able to guard the mind so that it's not invaded by likes and dislikes. Right or not? If there's like, that means you already desire. Correct? So if you're guarding your mind in that way, then there's no liking. So it's a form of renunciation. You do not desire sensual pleasure. Then there's also non-ill will, because there's no dislike either. Dislike is a form of ill will. So if you are able to guard the subjective experiencer, then there is no dislike. Therefore, there's also right thought, a form of right thought. Then there's also harmlessness. No desire to want to cause harm. That's also another form of ill will. There's also right effort, because what is right effort? Right effort is defined as the desire or the effort to abandon unwholesome states that have arisen and to prevent yet unarisen unwholesome states from arising. So that's precisely what you're doing when you guard the door of the senses. Correct? Yeah, you're guarding so that you're not invaded by evil, unwholesome states of likes and dislikes. And if you try to maintain that, that's also the second aspect of right effort, which is arousing yet unarisen wholesome states and trying to maintain and develop already arisen wholesome states to fulfillment. So by restraining the six senses, we have also beginning to overlap with right thought and right effort. However, this one is only restraint of the senses, no wisdom. There's no wisdom yet because wisdom comes below. Right? So that's why I did not put in what the Buddha defined so explicitly in MN 36. The Buddha defined developed in body as one who is not influenced by pleasant feelings. Actually, it could go in here because when you're guarding the subjective experiencer, you will not have likes for pleasant feelings. Right? But the commentary says this is vipassana. But I don't think it's vipassana because vipassana comes under wisdom. This is only the beginning part. No wisdom, you are just restraining the mind. Not necessarily with wisdom, just with effort and diligence. Okay? So MN 36 is saying that development in body means one is not influenced by pleasant feelings, could actually be subsumed under restraint of the six senses. But what the commentary says about vipassana does not hold, because this is not wisdom yet. Vipassana is wisdom. Then, by developed in virtue, I understand it to mean right action, right speech, and right livelihood. This is based on the neti and common sense. Now, the neti only has right speech and right livelihood under developed in virtue, and it puts right action under developed in body. Correct? Why did I put right action, right speech, and right livelihood under virtue? Because talking about an arahant, in the context of a root sutta, developed in body, virtue, mind, and wisdom refer to the qualities of an arahant. And an arahant is possessed of the Noble Eightfold Path. So if you look at the Noble Eightfold Path, you can classify it into three: Sila, Samadhi, and Panya. Right or not? That is morality, moral conduct. Samadhi is concentration, and Panya is wisdom. So That's where it comes under virtue, mind, and wisdom. The normal understanding of the morality section of the Noble Eightfold Path is right action, right speech, and right livelihood. So developed in body is just a precursor. It is a starting point, as it is stated in AN 650. It says that sense restraint is the proximate cause for virtuous behavior. And virtuous behavior is the proximate cause for right samadhi. Right samadhi is the proximate cause for various forms of wisdom. Now, developed in mind here, I understand it as right thought, right effort, right mindfulness, right samadhi. According to the Neti, it's only right mindfulness and right samadhi. But I've put in right thought and right effort because I feel that also overlaps with restraint of the senses. Right mindfulness means the practice of the 4 establishments of mindfulness. And right samadhi, this is not found in this sutta. Right samadhi in other suttas is defined as either the 4 jhanas or the one placement of the mind. Develop in wisdom, I put right view and right knowledge based on the Neti, MN 117 and common sense. Although the Neti says one who is developed in wisdom would have right view and right thought. MN 117 is Mahācattārisaka Sutta, the Great 40, which I did not give an extract here. In MN 117, it talks about not only the Noble Eightfold Path, the 8 factors of the Noble Eightfold Path, but it has 2 additional factors, right knowledge and right liberation. Starting from right view, right thought and so forth, until right samadhi, this is the 8 factors of the Noble Eightfold Path. The Sotapan, the Sakadagami, and an Anagami has these 8 factors. But only an Arahant has got 10 factors, which includes right knowledge and right liberation. So I put right knowledge under wisdom. But why didn't I put right liberation under wisdom? Because the right liberation is not wisdom. It is a consequence of wisdom. Because you have wisdom, that's why you are liberated. Why do I agree with the commentary that these qualities in our root sutta refer to that of an Arahant? That's because from the very beginning, the Buddha already talked about completely making an end of suffering, isn't it? From the very beginning, 2 paragraphs, he already talks about that. And then these examples are to show how it is possible. So therefore, these examples show that it is possible to make an end of suffering. In the process of making an end of suffering, you have to pay your karmic debts. And you do not have to pay 1-to-1. You do not have to pay an eye to an eye or tooth for a tooth. You can pay at 90% discount or 95% discount. You look at Angulimala, right? He killed so many people, and yet, what happened to him? Even though he killed so many people, even the king was so scared when he came to see the Buddha, he was shaking in fear. After he became an Arahant, he just had to pay back his karmic debt by cracked skull and torn ropes. So, what do you think? Is that a 99% discount? Okay, so this is how I understand it. This is only a Theravada. It's a personal opinion. You need not have to accept it, right? Something for you to think about. I want to make some comments on the significance of the similes. It is not about the quantity of good karma or meritorious deeds, like some of you pointed out, and which I also thought many years ago when I first started to discuss this sutta with the monks in SBS. That was more than 10 years ago. And then one day, Asma Kumara pointed out that it's not about the quantity of good karma or meritorious deeds, but it's about the quality and power of certain things to be developed. What is the basic principle behind being able to diminish the effects of bad past karma? It is to be developed in body, in virtuous behavior, mind, and wisdom, right? And what does this refer to? This refers to an Arahant. Right? And this refers to what I just pointed out in my last slide. This refers to the Noble Eightfold Path. So it is not about any sort of good karma, not just dana, not just inviting monks to do blessing, not just lighting candles, not just chanting, but it is doing good karma that is related to the Noble Eightfold Path. Only specific good karma. And that's where the power lies. That's why you have the power like that of a king or a prime minister. And you can get away with a lot of things. Some people objected when I was in one of the workshops. They say, you think it's really possible to repay all your karmic debts before you can make an end of suffering? Say, imagine, if you become an arahant at the age of 70, all right, and you live for another 5 years. Think about samsara, which has an inconceivable beginning. From then until now, you have killed so many people, you have done so many bad and good karma. Within 5 years, can you repay all your debts? Can you reap all your good karma and pay all your karmic debts? They say it's impossible, isn't it? I mean, logically it's impossible. I'll give you even a better example. This is the example of Bahiya. You know of Bahiya? The ascetic who was wearing tree bark as his robe. One day he was inspired to go and see the Buddha. So he traveled from the place where he stayed to Savatthi, and when he reached Savatthi, he wanted to see the Buddha, but he was told that the Buddha was not in Jetavana. He had gone out for alms round. So he went to the village, to the town, to search for the Buddha. And then he met the Buddha on alms round. Then he approached the Buddha and asked the Buddha to teach him the Dhamma in brief. The Buddha refused, saying that this is not appropriate. I'm on alms round. Wait until I finish my alms round. Then for the second time, he pleaded, and the Buddha refused. Third time, he pleaded, and the Buddha could not say no after 3 times. But don't do that to me, So I'm not a Buddha. Okay, so the Buddha relented and taught him the Dhamma in brief. And he said, in the seen, there shall only be the seen. In the heard, there shall only be the heard. In the sensed, there shall only be the sensed. In the cognized, there shall only be the cognized. Thus you should train yourself. And if you can train yourself in that way, you will not be here, nor there, nor neither here nor there. Or something like that. I'm just paraphrasing. The last part is kind of very profound and cryptic, not easy to understand. So after having heard that, and soon after he left the Buddha, he was gored to death by a cow. Later, some monks saw his body by the roadside and came to report to the Buddha and asked the Buddha, Bhante, what happened to him? Where is he now? And the Buddha said that he is a wise man and he did not trouble me with a lot of questions. He has become an arahant and he's one of your brothers. So go and take his body, cremate it, and make a stupa for him. So let's look at this particular instance. He became an arahant and soon after that he passed away. How could he repay all his karmic debts? How could he reap all his good karma? So it seems illogical and unreasonable, isn't it? But the Buddha said in the Anguttara Nikaya, Karma vipako achinteyo. The result of karma is unthinkable. One who thinks about it may go half crazy and half distressed, or partially distressed. So don't think about it too much. That's why in the simile, the last simile is about the power. Not just the quantity, but the power of spiritual wealth. And that is the power of enlightenment. That's why for a Sotapan, a stream enterer, once he becomes a stream enterer, all the bad karma that he did in the past that can land him in the lower realms become null and void. That is also uncountable, isn't it? From the inconceivable beginning of samsara until he becomes a Sotapan, how many bad deeds had he done before? And yet, when he becomes a Sotapan, all these bad deeds that can land him in hell or in the lower realms can no longer function. They become null and void. So that's also a miracle. That's also the power of enlightenment. Okay? Now, there's an implication here. Somebody also asked in one workshop, he says, okay, now if we agree that this sutta is talking about the qualities of an arahant, developed in body, etc., refers to the quality of an arahant. So only an arahant who is fully developed in body, morality, mind, and wisdom is able to diminish the effects of his bad karma. How about us? How can we ordinary people have any chance to diminish our bad karma? So, although this sutta or this principle behind being able to diminish the effects of our bad karma is based on the qualities of an arahant, perhaps there's an implication that the effects of bad past karma can also be somewhat diminished by practitioners of the Noble Eightfold Path who are not yet fully developed in body, morality, mind, and wisdom. But at least they are following the Noble Eightfold Path. At least they have a better chance of diminishing their bad past karma compared to Buddhists who don't walk the Noble Eightfold Path, who are more contented with just doing dana, inviting monks to do blessing, light candles, pray, burn joss sticks. Then in some other venues where this workshop was held, some people asked, how about people who go for repentance ceremony, and they are able to alleviate the sufferings, the physical or mental sufferings that they are undergoing? How about the slides that I showed at the beginning about the hado, about the power of vibrations through prayer, through words, through music, on matter, on water? Doesn't this show that there is some efficacy involved also? Yes, there seems to be some efficacy involved. That's why I said I don't deny that there's some use to these things. I'm not saying that all these things are useless, totally useless. However, one wonders whether by doing all these things, one is actually diminishing the effects of bad karma, or is one postponing their effects. Because it's just like you're getting sick and you go and see a doctor. The doctor gives you medicine, you get well. Is that diminishing the effects of bad karma? Right? So that's also another question mark. But according to the suttas, it seems that you can only diminish your bad karma, the results of a bad karma, by walking the Noble Eightfold Path. Or to be more specific, to be more explicit, only when you become an arahant. You get what I mean? So you can still go for repentance ceremony, you can ask someone to do Reiki healing for you, but it doesn't mean that you diminish, it does not necessarily mean that you diminish the effects of your bad past karma. You may be postponing it to later. But the more good deeds you do, whether they are connected with the Noble Eightfold Path or not, you increase the chances of wholesome karma giving results. And you decrease the chances of bad karma giving results. But that does not mean that the effects of a bad karma will diminish. It means that you reduce the chances of their ripening. And you have heard of many cases of spiritual teachers, meditators, meditation teachers who die of cancer, haven't you? Die of brain cancer, this cancer, that cancer. Well, you will wonder how come they are such great practitioners, they are vegetarians, they are so health conscious, and yet they die of cancer. Well, you can't run away from karma. When it's time to ripen, it ripens, no matter how much good you have done. Okay? That makes sense to you? Any comments or questions before I go on to give a final summary and conclusion of what we have done today?